What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It's that time of week. We are going to be doing the NFL Power Rankings, doing a little bit of review of Week 5 that just finished a couple days ago. Going to preview and talk about who's playing in the upcoming week of Week 6. Otherwise, guys, we're just going to jump into it. Baseball playoffs in full swing. That DS Division Series is coming to an end. We saw a couple teams be eliminated today. NHL season kicking off as well. So hopefully everyone's enjoying the sports going on right now. But we're focusing on football in this one. Before I do, subscribe to the channel. Just do it. I'd much appreciate it. Number 32, sticking at the bottom of this power rankings, we have the New England Patriots. Just not getting any offensive going this past weekend against Miami Dolphins, only putting up 10 points. Honestly had a chance to win that game, losing 15-10. I forget if it was penalties or something near the end where they really had a shot, and they just fell short. I think they had made a couple of throws into the end zone, just couldn't figure it out. Had they beat the Dolphins, they might have been out of this last place, but their offense has seen a lot better days. I think they're just kind of buying their time until they can throw that rookie quarterback in there. Not a great start for them. Their offense so weak. Their defense on some days is keeping them within games, but I just don't think it's making up too much of the difference. Number 31, arguably for a lot of people, this team might be the bottom on the board, but I think the one win we saw for them over the Las Vegas Raiders gave them a little bit of potential. I do think the offense is a little bit stronger than New England, but on the other side of it, their defense is giving up mad points. They gave up 36 to Chicago and only put up 10 themselves. I think realistically, if you put Carolina and New England head-to-head, I do give the edge to Carolina. That is the main difference on this board. I forgot to mention New England is playing Houston next week on the road, so or at home against Houston. That's going to be tough, and Carolina is going to be at home against their division rival, the team that is top dog in the division right now, Atlanta. Number 30, this team just can never seem to figure it out, at least for the past few seasons. It just doesn't seem to be working for Watson. The coach came out and did give him the benefit of the doubt. They lose 34-13 to Washington. Again, Washington's one of those teams that has been super unexpectedly good. Jaden Daniels just absolutely crushing it on the offensive side of things in Washington. Put up another good game against the Browns. The Browns, on the other hand, Watson just has not looked good. This offense has not looked good, and giving up 34 points on this defense that normally we're pretty excited about, just not seeing what we're normally seeing, and that has dropped them into clear last, in my opinion, in the AFC North, and a bottom row team on this power rankings. Number 29, I do have the Miami Dolphins. It has been a super ugly start for the Dolphins. Lucky for them, they're going into a bye this week. They could really use it. They are 2-3, so overall, picking up a couple of wins based on how they've played. Got to be a little bit excited. It was an ugly win against New England. They did win the first week of the year, and with Tua being out, it's hard to say if that's really being the biggest thing, but really, can one guy be making that big of a difference on offense? We're seeing a lot of penalties that are just terrible penalties by veteran players on this team. Something seems off with this team, and they're just not sorting it out. So they're going to have a bye week. They're going to try and sort it out. I think Tua's going to try to make a couple of weeks from now, he's going to try and make a start back in there. But right now, I have them down here. Worst team in the AFC East. And that's saying something. Well, not the worst team, I guess. I already forgot about New England that we already talked about. But it feels like they're the worst team in the AFC East. They're not quite there. But right now, not even close to playoffs. Number 28, I have those Las Vegas Raiders. They've fallen a couple of spots, and with Gardner Minshew struggling, they saw him eat the pine later in that game over the weekend. They went 34-18 against the one team you thought they had a competitive fight against in their division, the Denver Broncos, but losing, they never really were in this game whatsoever. Pulling within a couple of scores late in the game doesn't really matter. Vegas has a lot to work out. They're going to be hosting Pittsburgh, another team that has lost a couple in a row here, but defensively, I think Vegas is going to have their hands full, and we're going to see them fall even further. Number 27, moving up a couple of spots. I was not ready to bump them out of the bottom row, even though realistically, they probably are a team that is going to find their way out of it sooner or later. They win 37-34 against the Colts, breaking a 9-game losing streak dating back to last season for Trevor Lawrence and company. And they really need it. And it was not the prettiest of wins. They win by a field goal when all is said and done. They do play on the road against Chicago, which I think is going to really figure out, is this Jacksonville team ready to forget everything that they've been doing for those 9 games I was just referencing, take a step forward, get back in the playoff race, start talking about a team that is competitive, or are they just going to maintain their bottom row-esque and lose to a Chicago Bears team that is still trying to figure themselves out under a rookie team? Next up, I have the Tennessee Titans. Usually, and this is the first time we're going to talk about a team that had a bye last week, and I'm not going to talk too much. They're 1-3 coming off the bye. They're going to go be hosting Indianapolis, which is exactly what they need. They need to find this team. Indy's kind of hurt. We'll talk about them in a second, but they're coming out of the bye. Bye teams don't typically move on the power rankings board whatsoever, so that's kind of where they were last week. Number 25. Even though they lost, they had something. They kept the game close, 24-19 against the Green Bay Packers, and they're still missing a couple of their key weapons. Matt Stafford just continues to show why he has been such a dominant force in this league. Realistically, once they get their weapons back, this division is a lot more wide open than you would have expected. You would have expected San Fran to walk away with it. You didn't expect Seattle to go 3-0 and then lose their next 2, and Arizona has picked up a couple of wins in the division as well. So the Rams are right there in the thick of things, and if they get cut back and they get Nakua back, and they start picking up some dubs, that's going to be huge for them. I know they're having a bye this week coming up, so this is their chance to really rest up, get those wide receivers back, and have a big push in this division. Number 24, we just talked about them. They're having a big matchup coming up against those Jags, coming off a dominating win over the Carolina Panthers. And we saw what it's possible the future of Caleb Williams and the Bears offense is possibly going to look like. They did match up against a Carolina team who seems to give up 30-plus points every single game. So now they're going up against a Jaguars team who also seems to be giving up a lot of points. But on the other hand, their offense seems to be a lot better in Carolina. So this, to me, is going to be one of the matchups of the week in terms of power rankings style. Chicago moving up a few spots. They were in that bottom row all season so far. Pretty convinced with that win they just had that they can dominate most of these teams in this bottom row. But Jacksonville also wants to fight their way out. So this is one of those situations where maybe one of these other teams gets regulated back if these guys play well against each other. Number 23, dropping a few spots because of the loss to Jacksonville. Jacksonville didn't move up past them, but Colts also didn't fall super much. They're still running out with Flacco out there. Of course, he's a veteran. He's managed to play an all-right game as well. No Jonathan Taylor either, and possibly both those guys, Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor, might not play next week, which could hurt them because they are playing a well-rested Tennessee team on the road. So Indy could find themselves behind the 8 ball if they continue to lose with these injuries start adding up. These 2 guys in their division are chasing them, while the other guys, we know who they are far ahead of those 3. Number 22, probably the highest 1-4 team that I've ever had on this board. Mind you, I don't think I've ever had a week 6 power rankings. I think this is the earliest we've started doing them on this channel. Normally, kind of wait for baseball to end, but I got way too hype about football this season. The Bengals are there. While their defense has looked pretty atrocious, giving up a lot of points, and the 41-38 loss to Baltimore that we just witnessed, possibly one of the ugliest 10-point collapses in the fourth quarter that we have seen in recent memory, they still are a team that is much capable of being a middle of the pack at the very least kind of team. And you think with Joe Burrow and some of the weapons he's had, some of the offense definitely has not been the problem on the Bengals. They just got to figure it out. And it's just an ugly loss, an ugly way to fall 1-4. The loss to KC, now the loss to Baltimore, both ugly. They could have easily been a 3-2 team at this point. Even if you add in the loss to the Patriots, they could be a 4-1 team. So the Bengals, they just have some, football bad luck as well. So number 22, I think is very fair. Number 21, they are going to be coming off the bye. The Chargers are going on the road against division rival, the Denver Broncos. And as you can see, we haven't put the Denver Broncos up yet. We're going to talk about them relatively shortly, but Chargers needed that rest. Hopefully get some of their guys back. Hopefully Herbert is going to be able to play through this high ankle sprain that he's been dealing with now for a little bit of a few weeks now. I don't know. I didn't look for updates on how that's going, but hopefully the extra week does prepare them. Because right now I have them as the second worst team in this division, far out of the playoffs, which I know for for them is not something we've been seeing in recent memory. Number 20. Got to be pretty excited with how this went. I think if you're a Survivor player and somehow we're still alive, there's a very good chance the Giants are the reason you're out as of last week. 29-20 win over Seattle Seahawks, the number one pick team against last week in Survivor. It just seems to be one of those seasons where the number one pick team always gets knocked out. But the Giants, they showed up, and without Neighbors, everyone was counting them out, crossing the country over to the West Coast. Everyone was counting them out. They showed up, and their defense played a massive game. Their offense got things going as well, and they just kind of chunked away at Seattle all game long and picked up a massive, massive win. And we'll see. We'll see how they bounce back. They do have an awesome game coming up Sunday. They're playing the Bengals, the team that I talked about being quite underrated on here. So that's the Sunday nighter we have this weekend, Giants, Bengals. That's going to be one. It's probably one to watch. Definitely in power rankings, you like to see teams that are relatively close. It's kind of setting up for a good matchup. Number 19, the New York Jets went across the pond to England and fell short to the Minnesota Vikings. There was plenty of chances for them to come and hand the Vikings that first loss of the season. They just couldn't do it. Rodgers had a couple of turnovers. The offense hasn't really clicked yet for them. You really thought Rodgers was going to be the solution, and so far he has not been. And it's kind of shown here on the board. Well, they're still very competitive against top teams. I think we're going to see them playing on Monday night against the Buffalo Bills at home. So a little bit of an extra rest, a little bit traveling back. Normally, you sometimes see the teams go on the bye off this, but not them. They are going to be playing the Bills. Number 18, those Denver Broncos. Back-to-back weeks now, they pick up the dub once against the Jets. And also, what was it? Who'd they play again? Denver beat the Raiders at home. Massive win against the division. Now they're going to be going up against the Chargers. And that's going to be fun too. So Denver is kind of setting themselves up to be possibly the second best team in this division if they can come out with a big win against those Chargers. Bo Nix just seems to be getting it done for this team, and now that's back-to-back weeks leading them to win. One was a 10-9 win over the Jets, an ugly, rainy game, and then the next one was a clear day in Denver where they managed to put up 30-plus points. Denver's figuring it out, and that game against the Chargers, that's another one. We're only a couple teams apart on the power rankings board. Number 17, I got those Arizona Cardinals. Just a crazy, crazy game that they just played this past week, winning by 1 point over San Francisco, 24-23. They're now going to go on the road to play Green Bay, another team that I have in the top 10 as well, that just kind of seeing if Arizona is competitive. They've had a pretty tough schedule out of the gate. They played Buffalo early. They also got completely blown out by Washington early in the season. But they've been hanging around, and we're starting to see maybe a coming around of Arizona, who has been in the bottom row the past number of years. Kyler Murray finally healthy. This team's figuring it out. They did have a couple of lucky things go their way to be able to pull off a win against San Francisco, so I didn't put a whole lot of weight into that. Didn't launch them up the board. I still know there are some struggles here. But overall, middle of the pack, I think, is great point for Arizona at this point in the season. Next up, 16. One of probably the biggest falls on the board is the New Orleans Saints, losing 26-13 against the Kansas City Chiefs. They just looked ugly on Monday night. Couldn't really get any offensive going, and now we see Derek Carr leave that game, and once he's out of the game, the offense is pretty much non-existent. Now we've seen a couple weeks in a row of the Saints just kind of not having the offense that we might have thought they had after watching them the first 2 weeks of the year. Maybe it's a little bit more of the reality of the Saints, and that's why I've adjusted them the way I have. They do play at home against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay arriving early, of course, with the hurricane going on. So there's going to be a lot of prep. Another division matchup for the Saints where they really need to pick up a win here, because if they don't win here, they're going to be a couple of games back of both the Falcons and the Buccaneers. Number 15, I think they're staying in the same spot as last week. Wasn't really the kind of game you like to see on the Sunday night. They fall 20-17 to the Dallas Cowboys. They are one down away from winning a big game there against those Cowboys. The Cowboys scoring on the fourth down at the end of the game to take the lead. Steelers managed 3 turnovers in that game and only managed to put up 17 points. There is a lot of concern. Again, it's like a repeat of the past few seasons with these Steelers. The offense just not there. Fields just doesn't seem to be the answer. It'll be interesting once Russell Wilson gets back from that calf injury, what that's going to look like and how this team might look different. I hope for their sake it does. Number 14, beating those Steelers, managing to hop over them. I think at the same time they were both here, so I think they both hopped the Saints as well in this situation. Dallas, well, they win the game, did not do anything to impress me, to move them drastically up the board. They still seem to have a lot of issues. They were dealing with some injuries there, and Dak throwing all the picks that he did almost threw his team away in that game. So at the end of the day, he came in clutch, he made his payday, and he picked up the win. So I guess that's all that matters. But there does seem to be some frustration, as we saw in the Sunday night game, with CeeDee Lamb just not being, he was frustrated, especially after that one pick. So there is some concerns in Dallas. Another loss could set up a lot of panic, and they have a tough game. They're going to be playing home against the rested Detroit Lions, and we know how that could possibly shape up. Number 13, a team that was just on the bye, the Philadelphia Eagles. They're 2-2 after that bye. The rest so badly needed. The wide receivers desperately needed to get some health back. I'm not even sure if they're going to be back this week. Lucky for them, they're playing the low Cleveland Browns in their comeback. So hopefully they can just build off that bye, pick up a win here, go to 3-2 and maintain pace, because right now this NFC East is starting to be one of the more competitive divisions. The lowest team on this board is number 20, and if you kind of look, that might make it the strongest division across the board, because every other division seems to have someone a little bit lower. Number 12, I have the Seattle Seahawks, and they're one of the bigger falls on the week, and that's pretty much coming off the tune of back-to-back losses, and just kind of a pretty ugly loss against the Giants. We saw a field goal get blocked. We saw that actually returned for the touchdown that ended the game. Possibly it was supposed to be the game-tying field goal. Maybe it should be not holding that loss so much against them, but now the back-to-back losses, this one at home against a team that they were pretty big favorites against, and a little bit of concern. They're going to be matching up now. They're playing San Francisco, another team in their division, and actually the team I have at number 11 right now, which kind of goes to show who I'm predicting is going to win this matchup. But they're playing each other this week. San Francisco needs this win. They've been super struggling. They had that terrible loss to the Cardinals. In my opinion, that loss is only happening because of the kicker. They got hurt in that game. They weren't able to kick field goals. There was a couple times where they would have kicked a field goal and put up some extra points, and they would not have gotten into the situation that they are in. At the same time, they have McCaffrey, who is going to come back eventually, right? So I'm not going to hold them too far down. But right now, there's got to be a little bit of panic in San Francisco. However, the one thing going for them is no one else is really running away with the division whatsoever. Number 10, probably for most people, the biggest surprise of the year. Maybe on some people's boards, this team will be even higher, 34-13 over Cleveland. But for me, they haven't really played anyone above them on the board yet and picked up a massive win. So once that happens, and they're going to get their opportunity this week, they're going on the road, playing the Baltimore Ravens, and this is their opportunity to really show that they are here in the league and ready to go. Right now, leading the NFC East. Got to be pretty excited about that. Definitely when you have Eagles, Cowboys, and Giants. One of the toughest divisions, but they're all tight. Tough, but tight. Number 9. Got the Buffalo Bills. Just not happy. But I know Josh Allen must be frustrated with how things are going, especially in that game against Houston. They were down double digits, and they managed to claw back to a tie game and only to lose to a field goal at the very end of the game. Bills, not the same team that we've seen in the past. They have lost a lot of key members, especially on defense. But on the offensive side of the ball, we're seeing new faces, new opportunities for guys to step up. But it's all going to come down to Josh Allen. He seems to be playing well. Not too much concern there. And they are going to be playing Monday night against the Jets on the road. So that's going to be fun. It's going to be their chance to really be like, this division is theirs. If they can beat the Jets in this situation, they're going to have a couple game lead on Dolphins, Patriots, and Jets. And I think that should be enough to cruise, but they got to keep their pedal on the metal, especially when they're playing these division games, because having won the division last year, they are going to have the tougher schedule. We've already seen them play the Ravens, but they're going to have to play the Chiefs. They're going to have to play the winner of the South as well, which is Houston. I guess we just saw them play them. So they've already played two of the winners, Ravens and Houston. They still have the Chiefs. So I guess they've had a little bit of a tougher schedule. and they've lost the 2 tough games so far. But guys, as long as they keep winning when they should, I think it'll be all right for the Bills. Number 8, Green Bay Packers 24-19 over the Rams, and I got a lot of heat last week for them being low on the board. I'm moved them up, and a lot of that had to do with the rest of the teams kind of struggling. It's not more really has to do with Green Bay performing super well. They beat the Rams by 5 points. You would have loved to see them win that game more convincingly, especially considering how beat up the Rams have been and how they have been so far. I'm still not sold that Green Bay is top 2 lines on this board, but right now I don't have anyone else really to put there. And they're going to have a fun game. They're playing an Arizona team, middle of the pack, another situation where they should demonstrate a solid win, and if they don't, they're going to be right back falling down the board because one of these other teams is going to demonstrate to me that they're doing it. Jordan Love hasn't really demonstrated since coming back that he's ready to lead this team. 5 points against the Rams. I'm still a little concerned about that. So Green Bay, big game against Arizona, going to be fun. Number 7. Even though I think they had a loss, it did move them up possibly on the board. I mean, it's just because overall the loss wasn't too bad. 36-30 against Atlanta. 2 teams that I had, I think, around the same area anyway. Had them beside each other anyway. Had Atlanta already 1 inch ahead of Tampa Bay anyway. They almost went to overtime against each other. The offense on Tampa still seems to be Baker Mayfield bacon, and it's going well in Tampa. I don't hold that loss too much against them. I still think they're a solid team. I still think they're rightfully number 7. They're going to be able to play Carolina this week. I think they should be able to get right back on track with that. Number 6. 4-1 now, the Houston Texans. I got to start giving them credit because they are picking up the W's, even though they haven't been pretty. They've been super tight. Every game seems to be 1-score games, but they're picking up the wins. And I think at the end of the day, that's all that matters with Houston. It's a big 23-20 win over Buffalo. They're going to go on the road now, play New England, so it's very likely we're going to see this team go to 5-1. There's not a lot of wiggle room right now in the top 5 unless one of these teams starts to struggle. And right now, I guess number 5 is that team that has the biggest potential to find that struggle and have Houston fall. Atlanta. Atlanta's number 5, and realistically, maybe I'm overhyping what I've seen, but we've seen a lot of them on prime time. Kirk Cousins manages to get this offense going. It's Atlanta team that we're excited about. At least I'm excited about. Drake London, Kyle Pitts. This offense has been delivering it after a slow start against Pittsburgh in week 1 and a little bit concerned in the game against the Eagles. I think they're starting to find some rhythm, and of course that's going to happen when you got a new quarterback coming into a completely new team. Atlanta gets to go off to Carolina this week. I think I said Houston's going to Carolina. I said Tampa's going to Carolina. Tampa's going to New Orleans. Atlanta's going to Carolina. So I think I mixed that up in case someone noticed that. But Atlanta going to have that nice spot there. Number 4. They're playing some crazy football. They're like the most volatile number 4 I think I've ever had on a power rankings board in my life. Just being able to come back in Cincinnati this week, just completely outrageous. They've had one of the toughest schedules, if not the toughest schedule in the NFL so far, and they've managed to pick up relatively winning record, right? Playing again, probably continuing that tough schedule they've had. It feels like they've played almost everyone in this top 10. I know that's not the case, but it feels like it. They're going up against Washington this week. If they can keep winning, Lamar keeps playing the way he is. He's on the MVP level right now. Baltimore has nowhere really to go but up. But if we see the volatileness and we start seeing some of these other guys just play a little more convincingly and steady, we can see Baltimore drop. Number 3, coming off the bye, staying in the same spot as last week. Not too much to talk about with them. Obviously, the big story, they're going on the road to play Dallas. This is going to be one of the most epic things this week, one of the big matchups of the week, in my opinion. A matchup that we see very often on Thanksgiving. Maybe not, I guess. I guess they have their individual games, so they don't really play each other. But we see these teams like the Thanksgiving Bowl preview between these 2 teams. And number 2, I have the same team as last week. Can't really fault them. It wasn't the most pretty win over in London, but they got it done, and the Vikings are now 5-0. They are going to enjoy a bye this week, so we'll very likely see them at number 2 again, unless for whatever reason Detroit just absolutely spanks Dallas and convinces me that they are by far better. But right now, those 2 teams I'm waiting for them to play because that's going to decide who really is rightfully number 2. At number 1, we have the same story as every week this year. The Kansas City Chiefs winning for the 5th time in a row, haven't lost in, 12 games or whatever, dating back to last season some point, right? Super Bowl champs. Can't really dethrone them if they're not going to lose. They look good, and considering the injuries they're dealing with, Rice, no wide receivers really having, there's a lot of lining up with 4 tight ends in that game, which is crazy. We see Kareem Hunt possibly coming out and getting a rejuvenation plan for Kansas City. It just seems like Kansas City has become that New England Patriots team that's just next man up, and they're still going to find a way to win with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. So there you guys have it. Heading into week 6, 1 through 32 in the power rankings. Let me know what you guys think. Subscribe to the channel. Smash that like button if you made it this far. Football is still growing. The community is still growing on this channel. It's still relatively small compared to the baseball portion of the channel, but I do enjoy talking as well. So if you want to keep talking, definitely on Sundays, join the Discord. We would love to hear from you guys. Thanks for watching. Peace out.